Hi, this is Spencer. What happens when you get to the end of the wallpaper job and you get to nearly a full sheet, but you get to the bottom and you don't have enough? What do? Well, you can go out and buy another roll of wallpaper, that's one thing, but people don't want to do that. The second thing is you could try to piece together one piece to another and put on it what is called a leg, L-E-G. That is the phrase that wallpaper hangers use. So you could create a leg to the wallpaper if your wallpaper is not long enough. When you get to the end of the roll, it might just be 7/8 length of the wall, and through no fault of your own, you don't have enough paper. Well, one of the things you can do is to splice it and put the leg on it. Now you are looking at, right here, a splice that's about to be cut, and that's what I wanted to show you. Now, how do you do that? You take another piece of wallpaper and you put it directly over the existing. Let me show you what I did, because I know you can't see it. You see all this little design in here? This all has to meet up with this. This has to meet up with this. And the reason why I cut it down like this is so that it would afford me the greatest opportunity to make sure that all of my pieces are lined up. You see, if I just cut it flat, it doesn't give me the benefit of how is my paper doing 2 inches below the line. This allows me to see how my paper's doing on the right side of the sheet, in the middle, and over to the left. Because believe it or not, you might match up over here and over here, but you might be way off elsewhere. And that's why I wanted on a little bit of a diagonal cut, okay? And so I line up my pattern, one on top of the other, and the sheet, this is the replacement sheet that I'm smoothing out right now. You want this to be soaking wet. You don't want there to be any issue that it wasn't wet enough. Okay? But here's the kicker. You don't want it too wet. I know, it sounds like I'm contradicting myself. You want it wet enough where it stretches out. See, when you put two pieces together, you'll see that one of them is a little longer because it's already been wet, it's already been manipulated, and therefore the pattern isn't going to meet. It gets a little tricky. But you do your best. You try to meet it up, and you keep doing this till you see all of the little parts of your wallpaper meeting up. Look at how many ways we can test it. Look. You see all these little like beads here? Look at how nicely they meet up. Look at how perfectly they meet up, right? Look at these lines here. They meet up. They meet up. And if they don't, you got to move them over. You got to keep manipulating it. Look at how perfect that is. I like that. Now here's the trick. Where would you cut this? You want to cut it. Would you agree that there are more meeting places here than here? Wouldn't you agree that it would be silly to try to cut this where the wallpaper is busy, where there are so many meeting points, right? I mean, theoretically, we could cut it through here and go up here and come down here. So we avoid all of these little things. But you got to make that judgment. That's where it gets tricky. You might want to do that, but with a textured wall, that up and down with the knife might just affect the texture negatively. I'm not comfortable with doing that, but on your wallpaper, you might want to do that. You have to determine where it's best to cut the wallpaper, because that cut mark is going to be your new seam. Now, I say that it's different on textured surfaces because your wallpaper, remember I told you about texture, it might throw off the seam a bit. You don't want to highlight a seam on a horizontal cut, all right? It's one thing you can get away with on a vertical seam. The customer has to accept the impact that his texture has on the wallpaper layout. But when you're going to do something that requires expertise and experience, you have to do it to afford the customer the greatest opportunity to have a seamless appearance. So let's try it. No. You want the blade has to be never used. Okay? You don't want to be using a blade that's been used before. So I'm going to get us a new blade. Okay, that's a brand new blade. Now, you can see this whole cut. It's not really too much science to this, folks. All right, so I'm feeling for the end of my last piece. That's another thing you don't want to do is find out that you cut it and you don't have wallpaper underneath it. That's a potential problem. So let's just make sure. Okay, you can see where that wallpaper is underneath it, can't you? So we know that we gotta be somewhere around here. Okay, I'm gonna just make an imaginary line there. I don't want problems. Fortunately, we're 13 inches from the ground. This is not an area where people are going to be looking with a microscope. I'm going to try to avoid as many of those beads as I can. Let's see. You don't want to disrupt the sheetrock underneath it, right? So don't make it look like you're carving the Thanksgiving turkey. Okay, so we have our new cut. This is our flap piece. Now, of course, we've used a lot of glue because we don't want any problem. I know it's a lot of glue, but it's important that our paper be able to slide. I mean, you don't want to get this wrong, so you want it to be perfectly able to move the way you want it, okay? Now we got to clean the glue off. We're letting the wallpaper relax. I'm doing this now because we don't want to be touching this seam afterwards. So, I mean, it's annoying to have to get all that glue off, but it's important. I'll show you the seam up close when we're done. After this, we are not touching the seam again. We're not coming back to this. You can overdo it. Now is the time to doctor up any problems that may have taken place. I'm pulling down my other flap. You have an overlap and an underlap. This is my underlap that I'm about to remove. Let me show you up close what I'm talking about. Now, here is my new seam. That's it. Okay, folks, I'm close to it. This is where you gotta really have your patience, okay? Come down. Now, take your thumb. You want to fine tune this cut, okay? Don't forget, you always have the other piece next to it that you can move because it's still wet. You know, we only finished this piece less than a half an hour ago here. So now I'm just fine tuning this. Okay, I can move it over a little bit, like, you know, an eighth of an inch, and it doesn't affect it 3 inches away. I can move it over and kind of smooth it out. Okay? I'll bring you up close in a moment. One of the aspects of wallpaper hanging is, and any trade, this is any trade, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to look good. Okay? Yeah, that's going to sound like I'm making an excuse. Absolutely not. This is perfect. But we know nothing is perfect, so I don't like to use that word. But it has to look good, because you're the hanger. You're responsible for it looking good. And that's the responsibility you take on when you sign up for the job, right? Let me cut this now at the bottom. Okay, now I'll bring you over, because now if you see a variation in shade, don't worry, it's the proportion of saturation is what will account for any difference in shading at this stage of the installation. One is more soaking wet than the other. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm combing it right now, being very careful not to affect my new seam. And this is what a doctor does when he puts your flesh back together after you cut it, right? He puts it back together. This is Spencer Colgan from Spencer Colgan is Wallpaper. You can reach us on the web at www.spencercolgan.com. And that is our new seam. Right there. I can see the dark over here. I can see it. It's just because it's soaking wet more than here. That's all that is. It's off the same exact roll, so we're not going to see any color differential after it dries. Thanks for watching. Please click on like, subscribe to my channel. See you on the next one.